I finally got around to taking River City Girls off my shelf and actually going back and finishing it. And for the first several hours or so, I was having a lot of fun. It is a very action-packed, very simplistic, very basic sort of beat 'em up style game with light RPG elements where you're leveling up and getting faster and getting stronger and dealing with more powerful enemies. It's very, very simple, accessible, and entertaining, right? Like, you are a couple of high school girls going on an adventure to rescue your boyfriends from from being kidnapped or missing, or what could have possibly happened to these guys. Gee, I wonder what these guys could be doing. Like, the game's theme is fun. Like, the premise is great. The music is great. The mechanic, the general core gameplay. It gets repetitive quite quickly, right? It's very basic, right? You have like a light, medium, and heavy attacks, right? But it does get a little bit repetitive. It does feel a lot better than a lot of Super Nintendo beat 'em ups. Like, it took me a while to get bored of it, actually. Past a certain point, you're mostly playing this for the great creative boss fights that are really well made and have a lot of interesting gimmicks and all really stand out from each other and all really, really challenging to fight and all have cool designs. Like, the game is like a solid 7 out of 10 or something like that. Like, absolutely worth playing. I enjoyed it for what it was, right? Like, I'm probably not going to play it again unless, like, I get, like, I don't know, a girlfriend who wants to play with me. But it probably would have been a way better co-op game. But I reasonably enjoyed it, right? But there are, like, a couple of problems here, a couple of critical problems. For one thing, and I think this is the big one for me from a gameplay perspective, is that, like, I don't understand why the game is open environment. Like, I kind of wish, I don't want to say open world, it's more like open environment. You can sort of, like, go where you want, whenever you want, and, like, people will always come at you. Like, I think it would have been better to simply have, like, level stages where you fight a boss at the end. Like, I don't feel as if this going around to stores, going from place to place, accomplishing quests really does a whole lot for the game as a whole. Like, I think it's kind of padding. I think it's kind of filler. I think it's kind of pointless. Like, I would much rather have, a Double Dragon style where you go through a level with interesting mechanics, unique enemies that aren't randomized, where you upgrade as you go along, and you fight a boss at the end, right? Like, that's kind of what I would want from a game like this. I understand the original River City Ransom was a bit more like this. I'll need to go back and play that. They're not the same game at all, but like, playing River City Girls, I got this impression that, like, yeah, a lot of the stuff I'm doing a lot of the time is completely pointless, right? Like, fighting enemies on the world map, like, why would I do that? Why would I just not go straight to the boss? You know what I mean? Like, why would I not just go straight to what I'm doing? Like, accomplishing these quests, like finding out, like, what Noise's favorite things are. Like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just beat up the guard and go on to the fucking concert? Like, it's just, it's like, things like that, like, that just constantly, like, drag on you. Like, yeah, the game is stylish, it has a lot going for it, but at the same time, it's not quite great, which is kind of a shame, because I think if, like, they polished up a lot of aspects of this, the story, the writing, the jokes, the humor, they would have something really special on their hands. But as it stands, it's just a okay game. I mean, and I guess this is an era where, like, okay games like this don't really get made anymore. Like, this is still way better than the vast majority of shit that's available on PS5 right now. But I feel as if they could have done a lot more with this in a lot of ways. It kind of feels like an inverse Yakuza. You know what I mean? Like, Yakuza kind of does this thing where, like, the core combat is bullshit, right? The core gameplay loop of Yakuza is complete trash, right? Like it is completely repetitive. It is completely pointless. But the game keeps you engaged with like its sense of style, its characters, story, voice acting, mini games, world building, lore, character development. Like over these series of games, like Yakuza has a very distinct, unique personality to it that really can't be found anywhere else. Like I think River City Girls is kind of the inverse of that, where like the core gameplay is good, where like you're just beating people up, but it doesn't do anything else other than that. Like when like I play River City Girls, I just couldn't help but thinking, other than punching and kicking people, like there's not really a whole lot to this game. Like, and that's a lot of fun, right? But there's not enough meat there. There's not enough substance. There's like it's kind of like my problem with the beat 'em up genre as a whole is that like they're just too repetitive, and I got that feeling in spades with River City Girls. In a lot of ways, this game is like what 6 hours long. I think that might have been a bit too long for it. I was thinking, maybe this game could have been like shorter, like Super Metroid, and just be this thing that you could just constantly replay over and over and over again. But I think it's just a tad bit too long to replay. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I'll be coming back to this regularly. And I haven't even like talked about the elephant in the room, like the ridiculous way, the ridiculous ending. Well, to be fair, your mileage may vary on this one because the ending is like objectively terrible. The story and like the ending are like objectively terrible, but it's so bad it's like kind of amazing, especially the ending. I think the ending kind of just really makes you realize just how hilarious this story actually is, in spite of being terrible, right? In spite of being bad, like in spite of being like, I don't know, I don't want to say like it's not funny, you know what I mean? Because it kind of is cringy. It kind of is like ridiculous, but like there were times when I was playing it when I was like smiling and laughing at it because it's just so brazen with its ridiculousness. Like it's not. I made videos about this before, but it's not an SJW game. You know what I mean? Like this is a concept that easily could have been co-opted by SJWs, right? Like, oh man, the girls are doing the things that the boys could never do. But no, it's a very fun, very lighthearted sort of adventure where these girls are desperately trying to beating the shit out of the entire city, trying to get their boyfriends back, and it does a daring plot twist that I think the SJWs would deeply, deeply hate because it presents the girls in a bad light. It presents them as like flawed characters, which is something you can't really do with SJW female characters. I think that's the defining characteristic of SJW characters. I think is that like they're not really presented as having flaws in any way. Like their flaws are always very forced. They're always like very arbitrary. They don't really make a whole lot of sense. Like what's an example of like Rey from Star Wars flaw? Does she have one? I don't quite remember. Like maybe she can get like uppity with people sometimes, like and that's presented as a flaw, but it's not really because she's always right about everything, like that kind of thing. Like you don't really get that feeling with Misako and Kyoko. They actually feel like characters. They have personalities. They have their own unique fighting styles. They have their own interests. They have good friends. They have relationships with other characters. This is a game where two delusional psycho girls beat up an entire town for two boys that don't even know who they are, and yet they come off as like legitimate people with like a legitimate background and like a legitimate place in this in this setting. You know what I mean? Like I love that aspect of it. Like I don't understand why Kunio and Ricky don't prefer Misako and Kyoko over fucking Mami and Hisabe, who are cons, like who are complete bitches. Like what the fuck? Like those girls are complete assholes. Like why? Complete bitches. Like stop it. I'm like wow. I'm like, wow, guys. I mean, I guess I understand that like Kyoko and Misako are insane, but at the same time, I don't know. I like them more than the other girls. Like shit. But again, it kind of gives this game like this weird sort of a feeling to it that's kind of appealing in spite of not making a whole lot of sense. It's just it's fun. You know what I mean? Like in spite of all the game's problems, it is absolutely a fun time.